Welcome to the deep dive. I want to start off today by, just wishing you a week of absolute overflowing abundance.
Oh, absolutely. A truly blessed week.
Yeah, may you find clarity, purpose, and real peace in whatever you are setting your hands to do. And may your resources multiply in ways that honestly just surprise you.
That is a wonderful thought to start on.
I mean that literally too, because today we are looking at a historical moment where a community was so incredibly blessed and frankly so overwhelmed with resources that their leaders had to legally forbid them from giving any more.
Which is wild to think about.
Right?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of a fundraiser where organizers literally had to beg people to stop donating?
That sounds completely foreign to how we operate today. I mean, usually capital campaigns are like pulling teeth.
Oh, totally.
You're sending out those desperate final hour emails right up until the deadline just to hit a minimum viable goal.
Which is exactly why the text we are examining today is so striking. For this deep dive, we are heading into an ancient record, specifically Exodus chapter 36.
It's a fascinating piece of history.
It really is. And to really get under the hood of this text, we are relying on insights gathered from two distinct Portuguese study Bibles. We're looking at the Holman and the NAA, or Nova Almeida Atualizada.
Right, and we are using these specific sources because they offer this brilliant dual perspective.
Exactly. The Holman study notes are just fantastic for diving deep into the original ancient linguistics and the historical context.
While the NAA is really known for translating ancient, hard-to-grasp concepts into grounded modern realities.
So our mission today is to use both of these sources to uncover this fascinating intersection. We're looking at where divine inspiration meets human engineering, all centered around the building of the ancient tabernacle.
The construction of this massive portable sanctuary is honestly one of the most detailed architectural projects in ancient literature.
It's incredibly dense.
Yeah, but before a single piece of acacia wood can be cut, or a single thread of linen woven, they need raw materials.
Right, and you have a wandering population in a barren desert?
Exactly. The logistics of sourcing gold, silver, bronze, and fine textiles in that environment, it should be physically impossible.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the way they actually acquire these materials, it flips our entire understanding of economics upside down.
It really does.
Think of it like a modern-day Kickstarter campaign for a massive civic project. You launch the campaign, you set a steep financial goal, and within the first hour, you hit 500% of your target.
Oh, your phone is just freezing from the notification pings.
Yeah, exactly. It gets so entirely out of hand that the creators have to contact the platform and freeze the accounts.
That's essentially what happened here.
According to the historical text, the people were bringing voluntary offerings every single morning. It reached a boiling point where the skilled craftsmen actually had to drop their tools, leave the construction site, and go find Moses.
Just to tell him they had way too much stuff.
Right. They report that the people were bringing vastly more than what was required for the blueprints. Moses actually has to issue a formal camp-wide decree. He says, no man or woman is to make anything else as an offering for the sanctuary.
They were literally, legally prohibited from giving more.
Yes.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, that moment of having to issue a stop-giving order reveals a profound theological and sociological shift.
How so?
Looking at the study notes from the NAA, this overwhelming generosity was not born out of a heavy-handed guilt trip. It wasn't a tax.
Okay.
It wasn't a legalistic obligation enforced by a ruling class. It was a sincere, joyful, spontaneous response.
A completely free will offering.
Yes. The text anchors this reaction in the fact that God had just shown them immense mercy by renewing his covenant with Israel after a period of intense rebellion.
So the mountain of treasure piling up in the desert was the physical manifestation of a people reacting to grace.
Beautifully put. Yes.
Yeah. I hear the theological explanation, but I kind of want to look at this from a psychological angle because I am honestly struggling to reconcile their behavior with their recent history.
That makes sense. They had a very dark past.
Right. These are the Israelites. They were recently emancipated slaves. They have zero economic stability, and they are wandering in an unpredictable wilderness.
A very dangerous wilderness at that.
Yeah. And their entire previous existence was defined by artificial scarcity and brutal deprivation. Human psychology dictates that a newly freed, traumatized people would fiercely hoard whatever wealth they managed to acquire.
Oh, absolutely. Survival mode.
Exactly. So why the sudden dramatic shift to happily giving away their most precious resources?
You are hitting on the exact contrast that makes this scene so powerful. The Holman study notes highlight this psychological and historical whiplash brilliantly.
What do they point out?
Look at chapter 36, verse 7, in its immediate historical context. Just a short time prior, in Egypt, the Israelites were treated with such brutal disregard that Pharaoh systematically denied them even the basic straw needed to make bricks.
Wow, right, for his forced labor projects.
Yes, they were beaten and forced to build an empire for a tyrant out of literally nothing. They were conditioned to view labor as torture and materials as impossibly scarce.
They were completely defined by what was withheld from them.
And now, look at the reversal. Through divine providence, they suddenly possess an abundance of precious materials.
Stuff they took with them when they left Egypt.
Exactly. They have gold, silver, bronze, and fine linen. And instead of hoarding it out of trauma, they are voluntarily offering it to build a habitation for the Lord.
That's incredible.
They went from being forced to build with mud and no straw for a dictator to freely offering precious metals to build something beautiful for their deliverer.
It's a total paradigm shift.
It is. They're acting like free people who implicitly trust their provider, rather than slaves guarding scraps.
So you have this literal mountain of raw gold, silver, and dyed yarn just sitting in the dirt. But a massive pile of treasure doesn't automatically build a highly complex, structurally sound temple.
No, it definitely does not.
How do a group of former slaves, whose only real-world construction experience is stomping mud into bricks, suddenly know how to engineer a modular, portable sanctuary?
That brings us to the individuals tasked with the actual creation of the space. It requires a very specific, elevated set of skills to translate raw, disorganized material into a functioning, mathematically precise structure.
The text introduces us to these master craftsmen. It specifically highlights men named Bezalel and Oholiab, along with other skilled workers.
Right.
And they are consistently described with this phrase. They are called wise of heart.
That's a crucial phrase.
Here's where it gets really interesting. In our modern Western framework, we have completely compartmentalized human capacity, right?
Oh, for sure. We separate everything.
We put cold, calculating logic, structural integrity, and math in the brain, and we relegate passion, creativity, and spiritual feeling to the heart.
Like they don't mix at all.
Exactly. We treat engineering and spirituality as mutually exclusive domains. But looking at this text, it seems to insist that technical engineering skill is actually a profound spiritual gift.
It completely collapses that modern binary. The Holman Study Bibles spend a significant amount of time unpacking this dynamic.
I'd love to hear what they found.
In the ancient biblical worldview, the heart is not just the seat of emotion. It is the command center of the human being.
Oh, interesting.
The heart, or the mind, is presented as the central hub for both the moral willingness to serve and the actual technical intelligence required to execute the work.
So God didn't just give Bezalel and Oholiab a warm, fuzzy feeling of devotion.
Not at all. He filled them with literal technical intelligence, and he gave them a heart disposed to teach those complex skills to others.
To really understand that, we need to look closer at what kind of intelligence we are talking about here. Because this isn't just about being, good with a hammer.
No, the Holman Notes do a fantastic deep dive into the original Hebrew language to clarify this exact point. They unpack the Hebrew word chashav. It's a word used 124 times across the Old Testament. And it doesn't just mean to build or to make.
What does it mean?
It means to invent, to consider, or to project. It is a word fundamentally tied to engineering, architectural foresight, and artistic ingenuity.
So it's much deeper than manual labor.
Right. It's the word used for making complex calculations, planning multi-phase projects, and conceptualizing intricate woven patterns before a single thread is even dyed.
So the text is arguing that their work was divinely inspired intellectual labor.
Exactly.
They weren't just menial task followers. They were exercising a divine gift of chashav, an inventive, calculating, engineering brilliance. God is literally inspiring the math and the architecture.
And managing the human capital as well. The NAA Study Notes for verse 10 point out something subtle but crucial about the leadership structure here.
What's that?
The text repeatedly says, "they made the items," referring to the thousands of willing craftsmen as a collective group. But Bezalel is the one who was infused with this master level of chashav. He was operating as the master supervisor.
Which is an absolute logistical necessity. I mean, I can only imagine the chaos of 1,000 eager volunteers showing up to a desert construction site.
It would be a nightmare.
Without a master architect who possesses that overarching, divinely inspired vision to guide them, you are going to end up with a structurally compromised, lopsided tent that collapses in the first sandstorm.
Absolutely. The quality control required to execute these blueprints demands singular leadership. Because of the precision required in these instructions, it reads like a highly technical architectural schematic.
It really does, and that brings up a fascinating quirk I noticed when comparing the two sources we are using for this deep dive.
Oh, about the measurements.
Yes. When you read the Holman text, it translates the measurements using the ancient standard of cubits.
Right, which can be hard to visualize.
Exactly. So it dictates that the inner linen curtains must measure exactly 28 by 4 cubits, and the heavy acacia wood boards forming the walls must be 10 by 1.5 cubits.
It feels very ancient and slightly abstract.
But the NAA Study Bible does something brilliant for the modern reader. It translates all of those ancient measurements directly into the metric system.
Which completely changes how you visualize the physical reality of what they were building.
Suddenly, instead of trying to mentally calculate what a cubit might be, the NAA tells me that the curtains are 12.5 meters long and 1.8 meters wide.
That's massive.
And the solid acacia wood boards holding up the main structure. They are 4.5 meters tall and 67 centimeters wide.
That is incredibly heavy wood.
For those of us more familiar with feet, a 4.5-meter solid wooden board is almost 15 feet tall. It's like reading an architectural blueprint that suddenly grounds this mystic-sounding ancient text into a literal physical building. You realize the sheer scale of this project.
You could actually walk through this thing.
Right. It casts a massive shadow. It has real, daunting physical weight.
It grounds the divine presence in the deeply, undeniably physical world. And there is a very specific theological reason why the text meticulously lists all these measurements again.
Because it is very repetitive, yeah.
We get the exact dimensions of the fine twined linen curtains with their intricately woven cherubim. We get the agonizing details of the goat hair tents used for the protective roof.
And the red-dyed ram skins, the outer covering of fine leather or badger skins to waterproof it, and those heavy 15-foot acacia wood frames.
Exactly. And if you read the text straight through, it is incredibly repetitive. God had already given Moses these exact, hyper-specific instructions earlier on the mountain in previous chapters.
All right, so why force the reader to sit through a beam-by-beam, curtain-by-curtain repetition of the blueprint?
Drawing from the Holman note covering sections 36.8 through 40.33, this repetition is a highly intentional literary device.
Oh, really?
It is there to emphasize the people's absolute, unwavering commitment to building the structure exactly as the Lord commanded.
That makes a lot of sense.
By repeating the instructions not as a command, but as a historical record of what was actually built, the text proves that the Israelites constructed the tabernacle without altering a thing.
They didn't improvise when the work got hard?
Nope. They didn't cut corners to save time in the desert heat. They executed the divine blueprint to the letter.
So what does this all mean? I understand the importance of obedience, and I grasp the sheer scale of the 15-foot wooden walls and the massive goat hair covers.
Right.
But the text spends an inordinate amount of time detailing the smallest, seemingly insignificant connectors.
It really gets into the weeds.
It specifies the creation of 50 gold clasps to join the inner curtains, and then another 50 bronze clasps to join the outer tent. It details the specific loops of blue yarn that have to be attached to the extreme edges of the curtains.
Yeah, down to the color of the yarn.
Why is this sacred ancient text so utterly obsessed with the ancient equivalent of interlocking puzzle joints?
What's fascinating here is that those specific loops and clasps are not just an ancient parts catalog. They serve a profound structural and theological purpose.
How so?
It's basically flat pack architecture for the divine.
Yeah.
If we look at the NAA study note for this section, it highlights the ultimate goal of all these individual connectors.
Okay.
The text says they made 5 massive curtains and joined them to another 5 curtains. Then they used those 50 gold clasps to link the loops of blue yarn together.
Right, tying it all together.
And the text explicitly states the structural result. The tabernacle transitioned into a single cohesive structure. NAA uses a phrase meaning it became a unified whole.
A completely unified entity.
Exactly. The physical joining of the curtains with those 50 load-bearing gold clasps, and later, the long acacia crossbars that pass horizontally from one end of the wooden frames to the other.
Just to lock the walls in place.
Yes. These are ingenious structural elements designed to symbolize the tabernacle, transitioning from scattered individual pieces into a single, cohesive structure.
That is beautiful.
It is a habitation made of thousands of disparate, disconnected parts brought together into perfect, unshakable unity.
It's not just a tent. It's a highly engineered, interlocking puzzle that allows a massive structure to be broken down, carried across a desert, and snapped back together without losing its integrity.
A masterpiece of portable architecture.
And you see that cohesive system extending everywhere, even to the entrances of the structure. The inner veil, the one woven with the cherubim in blue, purple, and crimson, it hangs on 4 pillars of acacia wood overlaid with gold, resting on heavy, solid silver bases.
Everything perfectly matched.
But then you look at the outer screen door for the tent, and it hangs on 5 pillars, and their bases are made of bronze. Every single piece, down to the specific metal used for the floor mounts, has its designated place, its specific function, locking together to create this one unified building.
It is a breathtaking feat of engineering, especially given the harsh environment. But more importantly, it carries a beautiful sociological parallel.
Oh, I like where this is going.
The physical unification of the building brilliantly mirrors the newly unified spiritual community of the Israelites.
That is profound.
Just as the scattered gold, silver, heavy wood, and dyed yarn were brought together by the chashav, the divine ingenuity, to form one dwelling place for God, the scattered, broken, traumatized former slaves were being brought together to form one unified people.
The building is a physical mirror of the community itself, many broken pieces becoming a unified whole.
Exactly.
What a brilliant way to understand the text. Let's take a breath and just recap the journey we've been on in this deep dive, because we've covered a vast amount of ground.
We really have.
We started with this overwhelming, overflowing mountain of voluntary donations. A people whose psychology had shifted so radically from the trauma of slavery to the joy of grace that they had to be legally ordered to stop giving their wealth away.
A truly unprecedented moment.
Then we moved through the divinely engineered minds of Bezalel and the craftsmen, utilizing that beautiful Hebrew concept of chashav, that inventive, calculating architectural foresight.
Connecting the heart and the mind.
Yes. And then we got down into the dirt, looking at the exact metric dimensions of 15-foot acacia wood boards and the specific 50 gold clasps that acted as load-bearing joints, binding it all together and resulting in one unified habitation for the divine.
It is a powerful progression. You move from a willing heart to an empowered mind to a completed, unified reality.
It really is.
And looking at how closely the divine intersects with the mechanics of building, it raises an important question for all of us today about how we view our own daily labor.
Yes, and I want to pose that question directly to you listening right now. Think about your own resources. Think about your own daily skills.
Those things you do every single day.
Are you utilizing your own chashav, your inventive mind, your daily work, your technical and administrative abilities out of a sense of forced obligation, like building bricks with no straw for a harsh taskmaster?
Or are you operating out of an overflowing gratitude, bringing your best, most creative self to the table every morning?
That is the real challenge.
I'll leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. We've spent this time looking at ancient blueprints.
Right.
If the exact dimensions of a wooden board, the specific color of a yarn loop, and the metal of a tent clasp were valued enough by the Creator to be meticulously recorded, celebrated, and preserved for millennia.
Wow.
What does that say about the immense value and dignity of the seemingly mundane, everyday details of your own work?
That changes everything.
Your spreadsheets, your daily administrative tasks, the interlocking joints of your life might be carrying far more weight and divine purpose than you realize.
What a profound way to look at the work in front of us. Thank you all for joining us on this incredible journey through the ancient text of Exodus.
It's been a joy.
As always, it is a privilege to learn alongside you and to uncover these insights together. We are wrapping up our deep dive for today, but as you go out into the world and put your own chashav to work, know that God blesses all the listeners. Have an amazing week, everyone.